What's up, everybody? Today I want to talk about a really interesting little piece of gear called the Soyuz launcher. Now, the launcher is an inline preamp, which basically means you plug a microphone into it and it boosts the output of that microphone up to a better level than you had, and then you can run it into a recorder of some kind so you can capture that microphone the best way possible. The other inline preamp out there that you might be familiar with is from Cloud Microphones called the Cloud Lifter. A lot of people like to pair that with the Shure SM7B for broadcast radio style voiceover, that kind of stuff, because the SM7B's output as a microphone is much lower in comparison to a lot of others, so the Cloud Lifter can boost that up really cleanly without adding any noise or distortion or coloration or anything. The Soyuz is a little bit different. The whole intent behind it is to add some flavor to the audio that you're actually working with. It's got an analog transformer in it that kind of colors the sounds that come through it, so you don't get a true representation of whatever you're recording. It's actually a little bit distorted. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit more unique. Now, generally you'll find these in the music world. They sound great on drums. They sound great on vocals. You can plug guitar microphones into them. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do to not only boost the levels of whatever you're recording out of whatever microphone you're using, but also, again, get that kind of analog transformer sound that smooths things out a little bit. It adds some flavor, it adds some color, and it can be really pleasing to the ear. I wanted to try and see if there's some kind of application in the post-production world as well. Before we get started, if you enjoy these videos, you want to support my channel, head over to alexknickerbocker.com. I've got a whole collection of sound effects that I'm curating from my personal library for your royalty-free use on any project that you're working on. I've also got my first course up on Udemy all about how to build and use a professional mixing template for post-production sound of all kinds. So check those links out in the description down below. Anything really helps me spend more time on this channel sharing major studio workflows and ideas with everybody. One of the big things in professional audio workflows is the ability to do things non-destructively. Kind of like Photoshop, where you have a whole bunch of different layers, you can edit them all in different places and different times, and if you don't like something, it gives you the ability to go back into one particular detail of one particular layer and change just that while leaving everything else alone. Audio is the same way. If you have a whole bunch of different sounds making up a car or a gunshot or something like that, and somebody says, I don't really like that little tiny cracking detail of the trigger mechanism, for example. You can go in, you can just change the way that sounds and leave the rest of the elements alone. Plugging a microphone directly into a box before it even hits the recorder is not non-destructive. That's doing something in the channel path, and therefore whatever you record through that is going to get printed into your recorder. It's going to be married into the file. There's no going back. So I wanted to see if I could make this a non-destructive workflow using the Soyuz launcher in the post-production environment. The whole idea is to take any sounds on the computer that I'm actually using, route them to an output that goes directly into this Soyuz launcher, and then take the output of the launcher and plug it back into the computer, so I can just run things in real time as they're actually playing back. Again, the idea here is non-destructive work, so I'm doing all of this with source material already recorded, and then printing that to another track entirely, so it keeps everything separate and it keeps everything able to go back to the original format. The caveat here is the launcher is looking for a microphone level signal, which is much quieter than most other audio signals that are going to be coming out of an interface or a DAW in general. So getting that matched up was a little bit challenging, but I did end up getting it working. So let's take a listen to some of the sounds that I can run through it and how they compare to the raw audio as well. Now, to my ears, the differences here are really subtle, but it's all in the details. The launcher has an analog transformer in it that's basically smoothing out and changing some of the frequency response of the sounds that run through it. Transformers generally will kind of smooth out and slow down big transients, so they don't sound quite as sharp or as harsh. They have a little bit more of a rounded feel to them. It also slightly colors the low end and the high end frequencies of sounds that you run through it. Not in a really overt way that stands out and is immediately apparent, but just kind of makes things a little bit more analog feeling or analog sounding, for lack of better words. It does really impart that kind of character to the audio that you put through. Now, because the differences here are so subtle, I wanted to know what the launcher was actually doing to my sounds. So I decided to try and isolate just the sonic character that the launcher was imparting to see what it was adding, see what it was subtracting, and see what it was changing. I did this using a phase inversion, which I use all the time to check if there are differences in audio clips. And that's really useful when I'm receiving changes in picture, or if somebody has delivered multiple different versions of an audio file and I need to see which one is different out of the bunch. You can basically take the raw audio as well as the duplicate audio of, in this case, the launcher, and you can flip the phase of one of those pieces of audio and play them back at the same time. There's some interesting physics behind that, but basically it's like adding 1 plus -1. You get 0. So when I'm playing these two waveforms back together, everything that's the same cancels out entirely and doesn't actually play back in an audible way. Just the differences from those files will be heard. So I can isolate exactly what the Soyuz launcher is doing in each of these cases and listen to what's changed from the raw audio versus the launcher audio. Now again, that audio is just what the launcher is changing about the original signal. But all of the launcher's printed tracks now have this kind of sonic character added to them, which again, you can tell it's a little bit more smooth sounding. It's got a little bit of analog distortion type qualities to it. It's a little bit more pronounced in the top end, but also sounds a little bit more smooth. And with big transients, they're a little bit rounded out, so it sounds slightly different. Now, would it be easier to just plug a microphone into the launcher and run it as it's supposed to be? Sure, but by using it as basically what's called a hardware insert, where you're patching existing audio into the launcher and then bringing it back into your system, not only do you get that non-destructive workflow that's really important in professional work environments, but also you get to choose how much you push audio into that transformer and how loud you're actually driving that transformer to give you a lot more or a lot less character, depending on what your actual content calls for. So it's not only a good non-destructive way to work, but it really allows you a lot more flexibility than just simply plugging a mic in and hoping for the best. And that is really useful in every professional audio workflow, whether it's music or post or anything in between. Having a non-destructive way to add some analog warmth and flavor to your sound easily is fantastic. The one caveat that I have with the launchers is that they are inline microphone preamps primarily, and so they can add up to 26 dB of gain when you actually run sound through them. So you're going to have to dial the record tracks way back in order to get audio that doesn't distort the inputs of whatever recorder you might be using. Other than that, I think these are a really cool little device to actually get some character added to your sound in a really easy way, and you're not relying on plugins that, let's face it, they get 90% of the way there many times, but there are very, very few that can actually really replicate true analog sound. Maybe that'll change in the next few years, maybe it won't, but for the time being, I think the launcher imparts something unique, and I know I'm going to be using it a lot more in my own workflows. So hopefully using the launcher in a slightly unconventional way gives you some ideas on how you might be able to use it in your own workflows. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, comment below with any questions you might have. I'm over on Instagram at AXK, so come follow me over there, and as always, thanks for watching.